Howdy, folks. It's me, Connor Jones. I'm your host for today's podcast, and I know you've been waiting all week for this. No, not Saturday. Untold Tales from this side of nowhere. And it's a good thing, too, because you're in the right place for another story from that tiny town just about as close as you can get to the middle of nowhere. That is Poverty Flats, Wyoming. This is Untold Tales Retold, and we'll get rolling after a short message from our sponsors. This week our sponsor is Basin Pharmacy in Basin, Wyoming. Basin Pharmacy is your hometown pharmacy, as well as your source for over-the-counter medicine, vitamins, and supplements. They also carry office supplies, Russell Stover's chocolates, and greeting cards. The friendly folks at Basin Pharmacy are happy to help with any of your medicinal needs, whether you have a prescription to fill or a question about your meds. You can stop in Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to noon. Do you have a noxious weed problem? The team at 307 Pest Management can help. We offer residential and commercial noxious weed management that is safe and affordable. Whether you have a parking lot, a yard, or some production land that needs treated for noxious weeds, 307 Pest Management is ready to help get your weeds under control. Give them a call today for a free quote at 307-250-0614 or send an email to 307pestmanagement@gmail.com. Well, folks, it is so hot in the Bighorn Basin. We're looking at temperatures in the triple digits this weekend, and they're going to stay elevated throughout the next week. And, man, I am thankful for air conditioning. I saw on the news they're going to restrict fishing during the afternoon hours on certain rivers in the national park in Yellowstone. And thankfully, up on the mountain, it hasn't been too bad. I was able to catch a few fish the other day, and I think that it's a great time of year to roll out one of my favorite stories, the authentic fishing experience. So, here goes. It's worth taking another listen. The authentic fishing experience. Here goes. I'm not one to brag, but on a recent fishing trip, one of my colleagues from work accompanied me, and it was during that trip I realized how difficult it is for some people to have an authentic fishing experience. You'll notice that when I say some people, I am excluding myself. This is the part I didn't want to brag about, but it just occurred to me on this particular outing that I have reached that point in a sportsman's development in which I can complete all the necessary preparations for having an authentic fishing experience almost without realizing I'm doing it. You see, my friend, who will go unnamed so as to protect him from infamy, failed to prepare so he could have anything even approaching an authentic fishing experience. For one thing, he reached his limit in the first 2 hours on the water, and he caught the largest fish he had ever landed on that particular stretch of the river. Though he seemed quite pleased with himself, I knew that deep down he was upset, perhaps even a bit embarrassed he was missing out on a truly authentic fishing experience. And some may even say it was largely his own fault. As I attempted a rolling cast with half my fly rod, I had cleverly placed the other half in an obscure corner of the garage and then deftly forgotten to retrieve it that morning. My friend watched with a bemused expression on his face. "How did you manage to forget half of your fly rod again?" he asked. Mending my cast with a wide swing of my arm that would have sent a double Dutch jump rope over an NBA player's head, I gave him a wry smile. "Well, it takes a lot of preparation," I said. "What do you mean?" my friend asked. "It seems like you weren't prepared." I nodded sagely and watched my dry fly sink like a rock under the water's surface. "To some it would appear that way," I said, "but one day you'll learn what it takes to have an authentic fishing experience." Because it seems to me that this is such an important topic, and one which hardly receives any attention in fishing literature, I have decided to include here some of the basics of how one can prepare for and execute an authentic fishing experience. I dare say I have become somewhat of an expert, if not a pundit, in this area of the fishing school of thought. As I explained to my friend on that trip, in order to have an authentic fishing experience, one must begin preparations weeks, sometimes even months in advance. For instance, one true expert in the field of authentic fishing, my old scoutmaster Eli Lyman, often arranged to suffer some sort of injury a month or two before a long hike, so that he could be prepared to endure as much pain as possible while fishing. Once he had the foresight to get kicked in the shoulder by a cow in May, just so that he could be halfway through the physical therapy for his broken collarbone when we embarked on a 50-mile hiking trip through the Bighorn Mountains in July. Casting his fly rod was so painful, he often accented his casts with some language even more colorful than the vocabulary he usually used. An injury isn't the only way to have an authentic fishing experience, though, and there are several methods I suggest beginning anglers try out before moving on to the bigger things, especially if they have bad health insurance. One area of focus that I like to suggest for those who are brand new to the art of authentic fishing is the sack lunch. In this age of convenience and luxury, it's not uncommon for anglers to unwittingly miss out on this important aspect of having a true day of fishing. For instance, the friend I mentioned earlier actually brought a waterproof insulated cooler to stash his lettuce wraps in during the trip. An experienced angler will rely on a time-tested approach to transporting food on a fishing trip, and one that is sure to have the desired effect on an angler's palate. I refer, of course, to the brown paper sack. No matter what you have packed for lunch, tossing it into a brown paper sack and then tossing said sack into the bottom of a fishing boat is sure to produce a lunch that is soaking wet. Furthermore, if you place the lunch appropriately, it will be stepped on a number of times and consequently flattened. Nothing says authentic like eating a wet sandwich with a boot print in it. I must say, the satisfaction you get from knowing you are having lunch like a real fisherman is almost enough to make up for the crushed Oreo paste you'll be eating by squeezing it out of the baggie you put the cookies in. Not to say the Oreos should be crushed entirely during the trip itself. That would be a gross oversight in an angler's preparation. No, when it comes to preparing the actual lunch for an authentic fishing experience, these preparations must also begin well in advance. It all starts with the bread for a real fisherman's sandwich. This aspect of the fisherman's lunch can be difficult to achieve since it requires the angler to influence his wife's shopping habits. But if he is dedicated, it can be done. Consider misplacing your wife's wallet the week before the trip, but do not tell her you did so. If she knows she is not the one responsible for the missing wallet, she will stop looking for it and will make you look for it instead. After taking the necessary steps to make sure there is only one loaf of bread in the house in the week leading up to the trip, you must time the consumption of said bread just right. If correctly timed, when you are making a lunch at 11 p.m. the night before the trip, you can discover to your delight that only 3 slices of bread remain in the bag. You may think this is a folly on my part, because there remains enough bread for at least one entire sandwich. But au contraire, a true expert will ensure that the bread has expired by precisely 1 day, which will produce the desired spots of mold that really round out a legitimate fisherman's sandwich. At this point, the bread will be just moldy enough that the mold can be removed and combined with the remaining waffle on the top shelf of the fridge to form 2 sandwiches, one of which is a mutant combination of leftover waffle and bread, while the other appears to have contracted leprosy due to the large chunks of mold you had to pick off and the remaining holes in the bread. Nothing says, "I'm a true fisherman," like pulling out a squashed waffle bread sandwich come lunchtime. Did I mention this sandwich should contain nothing more than a slice of old cheese? I've known some greenies to use mayonnaise, and even meat when making a fisherman's sandwich, but you can always tell who the real fisherman is because he has artfully planned to have no mayonnaise or lunch meat in the house. My hero Eli Lyman once left all of us scouts staring in awe as he consumed a couple pancakes with a layer of cat food spread between them. At this point in my career as a sportsman, I can only aspire to that level of authenticity, and as much as I admire Eli's originality, I will likely never reach his level, nor do I necessarily suggest it. With lunch out of the way, all that you need to pack now is your fishing tackle. There is some debate as to whether this step is necessary, as nothing screams authentic angler like a willow branch and a shoelace, but I prefer to pack at least some fishing gear. Consider leaving at least one important item at home, though, such as the worms. This is a classic move I have employed on various occasions with great success. I hate to come off as arrogant here, but I once took my son, Al Jr., to a free fishing day at a kiddie pond, and by expert planning managed to arrive at the pond with a can of dirt, but no worms. Somehow Al failed to appreciate the way I had turned what could have been a very artificial trip in which the pond was made of concrete and all of the recently stocked trout swarmed our bait in a feeding frenzy into an authentic fishing experience. The plastic worm I had the foresight to leave in the bottom of my tackle box failed to produce so much as a nibble, and I was quite proud of our performance. Al, however, was unimpressed. Perhaps when he turns 5 next year, he'll have a little more respect for his father's planning. If you are one of those anglers that prefers to use artificial lures, don't worry. You too can have an authentic fishing experience. The trick is to come prepared with an assortment of approximately 7,436 flies, spinners, and spoons, none of which the fish in the particular river you are fishing will bite on. Whenever I see an angler show up at the river with a handful of hand-picked flies, I always have to hide a smile. Poor sucker, I say to myself. He's in for quite a day. When said sucker begins landing trout like they're going out of style, I just have to shake my head, then go back to untangling the 7,436 flies, spinners, and spoons that have formed a solid mass in the bottom of my tackle box. Occasionally I will pry one loose and tie it onto my line just so I can get the satisfaction of seeing the other guys watch how true fishing is done. In the event one of the lures you have packed does happen to attract a particularly stupid fish, or even snag a lame one, don't panic. Getting a bite is still part of an authentic fishing experience, and you have in no way ruined your outing, yet. The last thing you want to do is give your pole a quick yank and set the hook. It's much harder to lose a fish if you get the hook set, and I'm speaking from experience. I prefer to yell, "Well, looky here, boys, I got a bite!" while pointing the tip of my pole down and letting out a little line. For good measure, I'll add in a "fish on," at which point I'll either snag the line or lose the fish. You see, this augments the fishing experience far more than actually landing a fish. Only amateurs concern themselves with landing fish and taking selfies with them. You can spot a fake fisherman a mile away because his Facebook or Instagram page will be loaded with pictures of his face juxtaposed with a fish's. No, I prefer to do things the right way, to truly experience the sport of fishing at its highest level. Any newbie can land a fish, but a true master can always talk about the one that got away. A few authors, particularly McManus, have given some thought to the role boats play in authentic fishing, and, based on my somewhat limited knowledge of boats, I hope to add to the discussion. You see, I have not yet entered the ranks of those unfortunate enough to actually own a boat, so my experiences are based on what I have observed while on the boats of my friends. One downside to owning a boat is it actually makes it harder to have an authentic fishing experience. A boat allows the angler to get closer to the fish and makes it much harder to engage in the practice of getting skunked. Boat fishermen tend to catch more fish than those who fish from shore, but with a little effort, this won't ruin your authentic fishing experience. A great starting point is with a little miscommunication. You see, generally speaking, every river developed for boat fishing has at least 2 boat ramps. Be sure that leading up to your fishing trip, you always center your discussion on which river you should fish, while making a point of leaving out the name of the actual boat ramp. With any luck or skill, you will be able to show up at the wrong boat ramp on the morning of the fishing trip. A true master will be sure not to discuss the color of the vehicle his friend is driving either. This ensures that when you go to check for your friend at the other boat ramp, you will not notice him driving to the ramp you just left. And you can pass each other while muttering things like, "The moron went to the wrong boat ramp again," under your breath. By the time you actually find one another and get on the water, most of the morning will be gone and your chances of getting skunked will be much higher. Once you are on the boat, your task becomes exponentially more difficult. As I mentioned, there's a chance one of the lures you brought may actually attract a fish, so you'll have to get creative if you want to have a true fishing experience. Some anglers like to rely on an act of God or nature to get the job done, but sometimes you will have to go the extra mile. I'm not saying a torrential downpour or some unexpected whitewater rapids won't help spice up a trip and add to its authenticity, but it is best not to leave things up to chance. If a massive thunderstorm does happen to strike during your trip, or you run into some rapids, it will definitely help matters. But here are some other ideas that will work if neither of these things materialize. Number 1. Drain plugs are always a safe bet. Nothing gets an angler excited like getting onto the water and realizing those life jackets are going to come in handy. Number 2. Drop an oar or lose a gas cap. A boat with one oar is a true fishing instrument, and once some water is introduced into the gas tank, that 25 horsepower engine won't be getting you near anything but the shore. Nice work. Number 3. Fall out of the boat. I once did this on a trip down the Bighorn River and realized too late the water was deep enough to fill my waders. That made for an excellent story, but was a little too exciting even for a true fisherman like myself. Number 4. Run into another boat, a rock, a tree, or the shore. Things were looking bleak on one particular outing with some friends. We had all caught our limit, and it was starting to look like the trip had been ruined. Lucky for me, my buddy asked me to steer the boat alongside the floating dock so he could jump out and tie her off. With my usual skill, I successfully managed to hit the floating dock just right, so that it not only damaged the boat, but knocked my buddy out and into the water, along with a cooler filled with all of our fish. "You couldn't have messed this up any better if you had planned it, Jones," he yelled while treading water. "If only you knew," I chuckled. "If only you knew." Now, I realize some may be asking what an authentic fishing experience is all about, if not to catch fish. This is a common misconception under which those new to the sport of fishing often labor. It comes down to semantics, really. You see, if the central aim of fishing was to actually catch fish, it would have been called catching. Truly fishing is something else entirely, and it is a true art form many a sportsman has endeavored to master. It is, in fact, one of the great pursuits of my life, and though I have perfected many aspects of this time-honored sport, I still have much to learn. What I have included here constitutes nearly a decade of study and practice, and it is my hope these pointers will be of use to anyone who hopes to make a good start at authentic fishing. So, if you'll excuse me, Al Jr. has asked me to take him to do some catching at the community fishing pond. I suppose I'll have to humor him. When he's older and more mature, I'll have to introduce him to real fishing. Well, there you have it. Another untold tale from this side of nowhere. If there are any true anglers out there, I invite you to share your fishing experiences. No catching, please. Though, if you do have to, I'm always welcome to hearing about how you ruined a true fishing experience. It's been great sharing this story with you, and I hope that the pointers that I have presented can be of some use and help you in your pursuit of authentic fishing. As always, we'll see you next time in a couple of weeks, and between now and then, if you'd like to get in touch, be sure to leave a comment on our Facebook page, Untold Tales the Podcast, or send me an email at untoldtalesthepodcast@gmail.com. Until we meet again, this has been another episode of Untold Tales from this side of nowhere, where we work twice as hard for half as much and still find time for the important things, like fishing. See you next time, folks.